U.S. police officers have killed Black people with impunity, violently attacked journalists, and intimidated peaceful protesters. But what do alternative models to the violent and racist approach of U.S. law enforcement look like? Calls to defund or abolish the police have echoed across the U.S. after George Floyd died when a white police officer put his knee on his neck. But mainstream politicians and pundits have rejected calls to defund or abolish the police.
No, I don't support defunding the police.
Nobody is going to defund the police.
Am I for entirely abolishing the police department? No, I'm not.
This kind of reticence to talk about abolition and this reticence to talk about defunding the police, that is deeply linked to white supremacy and whiteness as well.
Hands up! Don't shoot!
Clearly, many Americans want to see radical changes in how their country is policed. But what if we told you that countries such as the Republic of Georgia or Germany have already implemented big changes, and they consider them far from radical? Hey guys, it's Dina, and this is part 3 of our series, What the US Can Learn from Other Countries. As the movement to defund the police gains unprecedented support, we're looking at what other countries can teach the US about policing. When it comes to policing, Germany is choosing to confront its racist past.
Some people say, oh, let's forget about it. No, it's such a long time ago. But it's not a long time ago. It is 75 years ago.
Learning about Germany's Nazi history is a key part of police training. It's mandatory for police officers in Berlin to visit former concentration camps. And cadets learn about law, ethics, and the policing history of their country. And Kirsten believes that police forces in the US need to be more honest about their own racist past.
America has to understand that they are confronted with being in a police tradition which was created and founded to chase people who were brought to America involuntarily under terrible circumstances, sold on markets, and they chased them, they tortured them, they killed them, and that is part of American policing.
In Germany, it's not just history that police officers learn about. It takes cadets between 2.5 to 4 years in basic training to become officers.
It would surprise them how long it takes to climb up the ladder of a career, of a police career. Once you're on the silver rank, you have another 5 to 7 years of practice, of working, and assessment through your supervisors. You're coming close to 7 years of police education, college or university, and police training.
So how does that compare to the US?
So rather than confront those issues, the chosen approach has been to simply overlook them and say, oh, we're all equal now. We had civil rights, we're moving on.
In the US, 70% of police officers don't have a 4-year college degree. A study found that officers with degrees receive fewer complaints and show a 40% reduction in uses of force. But the killing of George Floyd has renewed calls by activists in Germany to address their own cases of police violence and racial profiling against Black people. Kirsten says that education alone isn't enough. Rigorous real-life training can mean the difference between life and death.
After confronted with scenarios where they have to decide what to do, shoot or not shoot. And I would say that the main objective or the main aim of the training is not to shoot.
Let's go back to 2003 in the Republic of Georgia, when the police force was considered the most despised institution in the country.
Something was happening, so people would not call to the police because no one expected that they would act according to the law and according to the interests of the society.
For decades, systemic corruption dictated every aspect of life in Georgia. Detectives collaborated with criminals, and police officers made as little as $50 per month. Those low wages meant many people couldn't survive without corruption.
It was also possible to pay some particular amount to the high officials in the police, and they would not start the investigation.
The former Soviet country ranked 124 out of 133 on Transparency International's Corruption Index in 2003. So how did the police force end up getting transformed? Anger boiled over in 2003. Rigged parliamentary elections prompted a wave of peaceful protests led by Mikhail Saakashvili, who became president the following year. His party seized the moment of popular support and promised radical changes.
There was a huge support from the public because everyone was so much fed up with the corruption that we had in Georgia.
Saakashvili's party started with the most visible part, the traffic police, which was notorious for asking for bribes and pocketing receipts. They abolished the entire police force and fired 30,000 people.
Suddenly, the trust towards the street police increased dramatically.
They rebuilt the force with zero tolerance for bribes, increased salaries, changed Soviet-style uniforms, and moved officers into glass buildings that were literally transparent. By 2015, Georgia ranked 48 out of 168 countries in the corruption index. But rooting out decades of corruption did prove to be challenging, and things didn't keep this pace forever. Gigauri, the head of Transparency International Georgia, was one of the new recruits for the Border Patrol Police. But she quit in 2008 as the pace of reform slowed down and Saakashvili's government became as despised as the ones that came before.
And if you don't have the checks and balances system in the country, at some point you will have some problems in the law enforcement agencies. And the same happened in Georgia.
But for many Georgians, there's no denying that the immediate and decisive changes during the reform period did change daily life. And they've been cited as a model of what radical change could look like. This is how police in London responded after a man stabbed 3 people at a train station. The UK is one of 19 countries where police officers are usually unarmed. More than 90% of London's police officers work without a gun. Most rely on tools such as mace and batons and are only allowed to use force under certain circumstances. And some forces in the US have taken notice. A Florida sheriff has adopted de-escalation training from Scottish police and found it led to a drop in arrests in Volusia County. And one main difference between the UK and the US is its police watchdog. When a British police officer shoots or kills someone, the case gets reviewed by a watchdog, now called the Independent Office for Police Conduct. But despite the unarmed status of British police, some say institutional racism remains a problem. Black people in the UK are almost 10 times more likely to be stopped and searched than white people. While calls for disarming America's police remain highly controversial, some want police budgets to be cut so that the money can be invested in community support programs.
We have to reduce the amount of police contact that is happening specifically in vulnerable communities.
Black Americans were killed 3 times more by the police than white Americans from 2013 to 2019. And the police faced no action for 99% of the killings during those years.
We say abolish the police. What we mean specifically is, how do we find ways to stop including police, including them by calling them in, by escalating situations that can be handled by communities, that can be handled by experts?
You might remember this video of these unarmed Swedish cops de-escalating a fight while on vacation in New York City. But Sweden has gone much further in reforming its criminal justice system. In 2015, Sweden established a mental health ambulance, which is staffed by psychiatric nurses and a paramedic that respond to emergency calls from people suffering from mental health issues. A study found that shifting this role from the police to the community created a safe environment for patients. But these countries are socially and economically different than the US, where local and state governments spend more than $100 billion on policing annually.
We can't think about the problems of policing in the United States without thinking of broader political, social, and economic problems. Some of the countries in Northern Europe, they have approaches to homelessness, they have approaches to substance abuse, and so forth.
Police reform is possible. An awareness of racism is possible. Patrolling without military weapons is possible. Supporting communities without involving the police is possible. Other countries have shown that, so why isn't it happening in the US? From El Salvador to Kosovo, the US has a record of setting up training programs aimed at demilitarizing and instilling accountability. So isn't it time to bring home what it preaches abroad?
The United States has doubled down on its racism and has not tried to rectify its racism in a really robust and thorough way. Part of that humility will mean looking around the globe and saying, hey, maybe on law enforcement as well as many other institutional factors, the United States could learn something from other countries.
And in addition to looking outside, Black Americans say they must also be heard at home.
What I want Americans to understand is that the ability to have avoided this for this long is a privilege. The ability to be discovering this problem today is a privilege. My priority is the fact that people are fearful to be able to fully live their lives. And I think that should take a priority over someone's fearfulness about a danger that truly doesn't even affect them.